Hello, we are live in the Dibner Library of the History of Science and Technology. Today we're going to be taking a look at early books of anatomy in our collection. The Dibner Library is one of 21 branches of the Smithsonian Libraries, and we're doing a look at our anatomy collections in preparation for all those skeleton costumes and gory zombies and things. And so just a reminder that if you are a little squeamish, some of these collections might not be for you. We will be looking at things that feature skeletons and dissections and things like that. But thank you for joining us. We're excited to give you a special look at these books. I'm behind the camera. I'm Erin Rushing, the Outreach Librarian here for Smithsonian Libraries. And with me, I have Lilla Vekerdy. Lilla is actually going to be your host for today. I'll just chime in with any questions that I see popping up. If you do have any questions about what you see, do feel free to use the comment section. If we don't get to them today, we will definitely come back and answer, if not while we broadcast, later this afternoon. So Lilla, do you want to walk us through some of these collections?
Certainly, I'm happy to do that. Welcome everybody. We are going to do our Erie Anatomy show and walk through 500 years in anatomy books, looking at interesting illustrations. So the first one that we have out here is Johannes Catham's book on anatomy. And as you see, we have a dissection scene in the front of the illustration, and in the back we can see the professor sitting on the cathedra talking at the same time when he's looking at some books. So his presentation is based on the book and less on the actual practical dissection. Another book, which comes up almost 100 years later, in the middle of the 16th century, by Aldo, Colombo, totally changes the scene. The professor, like setting down from the cathedra, is standing right next to the cadaver and actively participates in the dissection, pointing out with his hands the different parts, explaining to the students who are watching attentively, and then another student who is taking notes, and another person who is looking at a previous anatomy book in the back.
Just a reminder, we're looking at rare anatomy books in the collection of the Dibner Library of the History of Science and Technology, and some things might get a little real. So if you are a little squeamish, you might want to just listen. But Lilla Vekerdy, our head of special collections, is giving you sort of an overview of the history of medicine via books. And Lilla, I'm sorry, could you remind us what we're looking at in this picture right here?
This is Aldo Colombo's anatomy book, and it is put in 15 chapters that you can see in a Roman numeral on the title page, and discusses all the anatomical parts of the human body, unfortunately and unusually, with no more illustrations in the book. You can imagine how much descriptive text is used here because there are no pictures.
Wow. And if you do have any questions about what you're seeing, go ahead and write them in the comments. We'll try to get to them. If we don't get to them during the live broadcast, we will definitely come back and answer in the comments section.
Now we jump to the 18th century. And those people who know anatomy books will be very much surprised, because this illustration is very well known, but not from the 18th century, but from its predecessor from the 16th. This woodcut illustration is the actual source that Andreas Vesalius used way back in 1543 in his anatomy book, the Fabrica, the fabric of the human body. And that woodblock is reused here 200 years later in a German publication. As you can see up here, the title is in the German script, the Fraktur script, and the author is not Vesalius but Leveling, an 18th century German anatomist. This is a Renaissance scene, though. It didn't change since Vesalius had it in his anatomy. A very convoluted scene, very similar to Colombo's illustration. So we have the anatomist, the professor, right next to the cadaver, as opposed to in the first book where he was sitting on a cathedra. And he's pointing out all the different parts of the human body.
We did have one question, why the emphasis on bowels?
Well, that's where most of the dissections started. If they open up a human body, that's what comes closest to the opening and has to be removed in order to see the other parts.
Oh, and this is a good time for a reminder that things might get a little gruesome. So if you're a little squeamish, maybe just listen for now. And is that a dog in the corner or a monkey?
There is a dog here.
Dog here.
And there is a monkey there.
And a monkey there.
Now, it's not really the case that at Renaissance dissections there were monkeys and dogs in the place. The representation of a monkey is supposedly a symbolic point to Galen, the 2nd century ancient physician, whose book was very well used before the Renaissance and even after it. And he actually only did dissection up to monkeys and not on the human body. Doing dissection on the human body was always a questionable thing. It wasn't totally prohibited, as many people think. There were dissections at universities in the Middle Ages, and after that, more and more often. The only restriction was for a while that the body that they had for teaching purposes and dissections had to be a criminal's body.
Oh.
Therefore, there were very few female bodies dissected.
Oh, interesting. Just a reminder, we are live in the Dibner Library of the History of Science and Technology, one of the 21 branches of the Smithsonian Libraries, and we're taking a look at some of our rare anatomy books so that you can have some really authentic skeleton costumes this Halloween.
Yes, from the 18th century, now we go to the mid-19th. And finally, we see a book whose title is in the English language, easy to get familiar with. The author is Jones Quain, and he's putting together, as you see, a sizable atlas on the human body. It is still in the classical order. It starts out with bones, skeletons, and then discusses the muscles, then the veins and the arteries, then the nervous system, and finally the inner organs. The skeleton harkens back to earlier illustrations. Some of Vesalius's skeletons are similar to this presentation, especially having the background, the beautiful landscape background behind the skeleton. It is also interesting that the skeleton is almost alive. It's moving like a live figure. It has gestures and almost facial expressions. when the artist shows the skeleton on this lithograph from the front, then he makes sure that he shows the back part.
Oh, wow. And what do you think he's standing next to? Or
Well, this is a humongous leg bone and the hip bone and the humongous head,
oh,
quite improportionate to the main skeleton in the picture. I mean, disproportionate. And then, about the same time in the middle 19th century, there was a very important French anatomist whose work really cornered the market and became very well known in science and medicine. This is a comparative anatomy book by Georges Cuvier, where he makes comparisons between the human body and some apes and monkeys. So here I tried to find some eerie ones for you in honor of Halloween, and show some faces and paws or hands.
oh, wow, down to the fingerprints.
Yes, absolutely, very detailed. See, this is also lithography. It makes it a very detailed and precise scientific illustration. The technology of lithography allows to do these minute details.
We have a few questions about the last book, the Quain book. Someone has asked, oh, I can show that while we're chatting. Someone has asked, is the background, the landscape setting, meant to appeal to artists who are studying anatomy for their art, or were they meant to be realistic, the landscapes?
Well, let's go back and see. The landscapes were usually used as an additional aesthetic in these pictures. So I don't think that they paid a lot of attention to be 100% realistic. Mm-hmm. But I think these ones would go for natural depiction of the scenery, and if you didn't have the skeleton in the front, you might have it just a nice landscape.
Yes.
Yes.
And we also had a question about, is there meant to be any symbolism between the giant leg bones and skull and the smaller skeleton?
Well, I have to honestly say I don't know. We would have to read the section of the book which describes the certain parts of this illustration. I'm sure the author made some explanation for those. Okay. I haven't done that reading yet.
Okay, so back to our Cuvier.
Yes, I thought this was a little bit eerie too. This is the muscle system of this animal called papillon. And then another species later on.
Oh my.
A little softer, not as frightening face.
I don't know, that one's still pretty.
If I cover this part up and you disregard the hair, it's not that bad.
Well, he does look cute in this picture.
Yeah,
I would say. The profile is very cute.
Yeah, yeah. And then Cuvier gives the illustration of his paws and tail as well.
We had a question, can anyone view these books? How do you keep them so intact?
Oh, absolutely. the libraries in the Smithsonian system are all open to the public. Even this one, the Dibner Library, which has only rare holdings, can be visited Monday through Friday from 9 to 5. Anyone can make an appointment and come and see these books. Even sit down and peruse them, turn pages, and so forth. And now finally we get to the 1880s, the end of the 19th century, when anatomical illustration really became very complicated and well accessorized by various things, such as this little key which locks this book, and when we open it we get into an anatomical aid for medical students, which is operating with superimposed flaps. So you can see the surface of the body and then what's under the skin on one side. And then on the other, you have the head and this little tag here, which we can turn and see the layers underneath this illustration.
So would this have been for use by medical students or general knowledge?
Well, I think both, but mostly medical students, because as you see, the parts are numbered. So I am sure the Latin names and the explanation of each segment is in the book. So it's highly didactical.
Mm-hmm. Oh my.
So we arrived at the end of the 19th century. I hope you enjoyed your journey, and we are happy to have more questions.
Yep. We will hang out for just a few minutes to see if any other questions pop up. And if we don't get to them during the broadcast, we're happy to come back and answer them afterwards. Someone asked, will these be digitized for electronic and online viewing? And the answer is maybe. Some of them already have, and we have provided, I think, a few links in the comments to what's already been digitized. We do have a pretty active scanning program, so it's likely that we will digitize these in the not too distant future, I think.
That's right.
Oh, and then we have a favorite question for many: how do I get a job there?
I know. I often get this question. Well, there's one open, or was open, not long ago, so USA Jobs.
One question is, what was the lithography process on the oldest books?
Well, on the oldest books, it's not lithography. It's actually woodblock illustration, woodcuts, which are made with the aid of a piece of wood, which is carved in the way of the artist carving away what we don't want to see in the picture. So it becomes like your rubber stamp. What you want to see is sticking up, and that's what is being inked, and then the paper pressed on it, and you get this very nice, mostly line and space type illustration. This method really doesn't allow showing shadows and shades and minute details, which the lithograph, as you saw on the monkeys, easily can do.
Mm-hmm. We have a question about the last book that we viewed, which was about how many of the physician's anatomical aid patented were produced, do you think?
Oh, we are in the mass production era of book printing, so I am sure that many. Now, I am not sure, though, that many are in this good condition. Mm-hmm. So, you know, having little keys and locks and superimposed flaps and tags is a risky thing. These can get lost, break off, and so on. So I am not sure what condition we would find on other copies. Mm-hmm. But the honest answer is thousands.
And one last question I think we'll take today is, what kind of ink did they use for the lithographs?
Well, the lithography process is an interesting thing, very different from the woodcut that we were, which we were looking at. So you have a slab of a stone, and then you have crayons. And so you draw the illustration on top of the stone, and then scrape away what you don't want shown, and then based on the fact that water doesn't mix with oil, some oily paint and water is added on top of the drawing, and the oily paint sticks to the crayon, and the water soaks into the stone, and that creates, it's a little more complicated than this, but that's the skeleton, if I may say, of the process.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Lilla, for giving us this quick tour of rare anatomy books in the Dibner Library. We hope that we've given you something to think about this Halloween as you see all of the various body parts in various states over the weekend. And we will see you again next time. Bye-bye.
Bye.